Mystery Mondays, 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 Mystery Monday, Mystery Monday, Mystery Monday, Mystery Mondays, Mystery Mondays, Mystery Mondays, Mystery Mondays. What will the mystery be today? It is Mystery Mondays. Welcome to the latest series that Pandora's box is bringing to y'all on the tubes and on the Spotifys. It is Mystery Mondays, where we will be bringing you a different mystery every Monday. It's all in the name.
Exciting stuff.
It's all in the name, Mystery Mondays. So if you missed last week's, that was our first episode of Mystery Mondays, which was all about the Somerton Man. The mysterious death of the Somerton Man. Who was he? Will we ever know? Probably not. But we do know one thing, and that's that he had very well developed calves, mangled toes,
May have been a tap dancer.
elvish ears, and vampire teeth. And yeah, just a bit of a shady character. But today I'm going to tell you all about the disappearance of Dennis Martin.
Dennis Martin?
Dennis Martin.
Dennis Martin?
Was he Scottish?
No, he wasn't, but I thought it would add to the ambience a little bit.
see.
I'll see how long it lasts. Hopefully it'll last the whole time, but we'll see, won't we, to be honest. If my voice starts cracking into like Australian or something, I'll stop
cracking.
Do you want me to crack on, lads?
Hey,
Do you want to hear the
Who's
story?
This Dennis
I wanna
Martin?
Dennis
hear it.
Martin.
Who is Dennis Martin?
I'll tell you. Dennis Lloyd Martin was born on the 20th of June, 1962. He was an American child who disappeared on June the 14th, 1969, in the Great Smoky Mountain of the National Park in Tennessee, at just the age of 6 years old.
Oh, he was a young laddie.
To this day, the search effort is the most extensive in the park's history, involving over 1,400 searchers and a 56 square mile area. 6-year-old Dennis Martin went camping with all the family members in June of 1969. He was last seen preparing to spring a surprise on his father and grandfather alongside his brother and other children. But he never emerged from his hiding place, and despite the largest search in the history of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, no trace of the poor lad has ever been found.
Oh, no.
The Martins family from Knoxville had a long-established tradition of the male members of the family taking a camping trip to the nearby Great Smoky Mountains National Park to celebrate Father's Day every single year. Dennis travelled to the park for his first camping trip alongside his father, his grandfather, and his elderly brother, initially arriving at what's known as Cades Cove. The group then hiked to Russell Field, where they camped overnight. The following morning, they set off for Spence Field, a highland meadow and popular camping spot bisected by the famous Appalachian Trail. On arrival, the two Martin children were allowed to play with others camping nearby. His father watched the boy disappear into bushes to hide alongside the other children as they set about springing a surprise on the adults. However, while the other children quickly emerged, Dennis did not.
Whoa.
Immediately, his father and grandfather began searching for him, with his father running 2 miles along the trail, shouting his name before returning to camp. His grandfather then hiked out to raise the alarm, arriving at Cades Cove Ranger Station at around 8:30 p.m. that evening. A 4-hour hike, not bad for an old lad. An extensive search was then launched, with National Park Service personnel, supplemented by National Guard troops, and even Green Berets were called in from the US military. In total, around 1,400 searchers searched the national park, but found zero sign of the child.
Zilch.
Whoa.
Zilch. The search was later criticised, in part due to the overly large number of personnel involved, which potentially obscured tracks in ground with already difficult to track terrain. Apparently it started raining shortly after the lad disappeared, so it would have already maybe obscured some tracks, but then with all the people walking through the forest, it was hard to ascertain whose footsteps were whose.
It's crazy as well. You think it couldn't have got, as a 6-year-old lad, he couldn't have gone far from where they were.
Well, this is one of the reasons why it's still such a massive mystery
Unless there's
to
a
this day.
sinkhole or something.
I mean, yeah, exactly, but no sinkholes that anybody's aware of.
Whoa.
And even, the most seasoned hikers and park rangers and, as I said, Green Berets that have been trained to, fight in jungle and
Track
forest
and
warfare.
trace.
So, was he literally just with all the other boys when they were hiding? And then when they jumped out, they realised he wasn't there
They
anymore?
were in a slightly different place, but they were all sort of near to each other.
Right.
They from where everybody was, they could see the bush that the lad was hiding behind.
Right.
But then he just never appeared from behind the bush.
Right.
The father went to look, thinking obviously that he'd find him pretty quickly, and then obviously started to get increasingly more panicked as he was walking around screaming his son's name. Not only was there...
Sorry.
No, go on.
I was just going to say, already it's interesting that there was no, you would have thought if something happened to him, then he would have screamed or something.
Exactly. Well, this is part of the mystery. I mean, it's they were the only people around for a couple of miles as far as they were aware. So they, if, in that sort of environment, if your vocals carry. There was no sign of a boy screaming, and let's face it, a fully grown man can cover ground a lot quicker than a 6-year-old boy. But even though the father was running in all the plausible directions that the boy could have possibly gone, there was no sign of the lad whatsoever.
And a 6-year-old can they got a voice on him. He could have screamed.
Yeah.
If he was in any pain or
if it's a bear or something.
I'll tell you what though, lad, this tale gets very, very crazy. There's several theories and which make this one go quite off the deep end, as we can do sometimes.
Let's open Pandora's box.
Let's open Pandora's box and see what delights they have to offer for us today. So where was I? The tracks of a child were found, but they were dismissed as belonging to one of the Boy Scouts that was helping search in the area. However, the tracks were later reported to have come from a child who was missing one shoe and which disappeared on the banks of a stream. So there's shady reports of that one. Some people thought that these tracks were from a Boy Scout, and other ones were saying that it looked like it was from a lad that had lost one shoe and was walking in just one. So, it's maybe signs of distress or somebody that was lost and in a bit of a tether. This was reported when a shoe and a sock were found 3 days into the search, which obviously correlates with the idea that maybe some boy was walking around and somehow had lost his shoe and his sock. Although even that's a bit strange. If you were lost, why would you take your shoe and your sock off and then carry on walking?
Maybe he put it in the water and it was a bit wet, and he was like, "Ugh, don't like wet foot."
Yeah, it could be something like that.
By the river.
Yeah, so it could be something like that. Despite searchers continuing their effort for over 2 weeks, no further trace of Martin was ever found. A $5,000 reward was offered up by the family, which turned up a number of calls from psychics and clairvoyants, but nothing ever led to a breakthrough in the case. I just think it's important to mention as well that $5,000 back in 1969 is the equivalent to
Big chunk of wonga.
it's the equivalent to over $36,000 today. So the father of the poor boy basically offered up every single cent and dollar of money that he owned, hoping that somebody would come forward with information of his son.
I can't even imagine something like that happening, you know. When you got no control over it.
I tell you what,
You know?
I tell you what, lads. If
Yeah, you're a father.
when I was researching this case, I was thinking about if it was my little impish daughter Ivy, and if she just disappeared, then I would be overcome with grief for the rest of my life. To be honest with you, it would never really leave me, as I'm sure it didn't leave Mr. Martin, Mr. William Martin, the father. But this is it starts getting very interesting. Different accounts start making things very interesting a bit later on, but we'll get there. Some years later, a man who had been illegally collecting ginseng in the park claimed to have come across the skeletal remains of a child.
Ginseng?
But failed to inform authorities until 1985 for fear of prosecution.
When was the first event?
69.
June
Whoa.
June the 14th, 1969. Yeah, so he's been this lad has been disappeared for 53 years. Nobody's seen him or found any concrete proof of remains or anything.
So,
as I said, this one fella did say that he found the skeletal remains of a child, but he didn't come forward at the time because he was involved in illegal activities. But when the authorities went to the place where the guy collecting ginseng said the skeletal remains were, there were no remains to be found.
There were no remains.
So that's, I mean, yet again, more mystery. So it's like, was the guy? I mean, I doubt the guy would have been making it up. I mean, especially if he was especially if he was involved in illegal activities, a bit like, you know, putting himself possibly at risk. But decided that it was still the best thing to do under the circumstances, I guess.
Years later.
I guess at that point, that's 16 years after the original incident, isn't it? So stuff could have happened to maybe animals could have picked it up, that kind of thing.
Yep. I mean, yep, possibly. But the fact that there wasn't even anything, like not even like a rib bone or like any bones at all, like what use would the animals have of bones like that, you know? But anyway, as I said, so that searchers again drew a blank when they could not find the remains. This is where it starts getting a bit strange, lads. So, in regards to what happened to the boy, most researchers believe that he most likely became disorientated and got lost, strayed away from the camp or lost his footing and fell down one of the numerous steep slopes and ravines in the area.
I see.
They think that the next most likely scenario is that a bear or even maybe a feral pig might have carried them away and then eaten the poor lad. But still, there's lots of holes in this case. Firstly, the wee lad was wearing a bright red t-shirt when he disappeared. If he fell down a ravine or anything like that and died from injuries, he would have probably been spotted quite quickly by the various park rangers and hikers and Green Berets that were searching the area.
Red is a very distinctive colour.
It's a very bright colour. It sticks out like a sore thumb in a land of
green environment.
And green and grey and brown environment, such as like a wilderness area. So that seems strange. Also, as I said, no remains were ever found. There were no screams in the area. If the boy had been dragged off by a bear behind a bush, you would have heard a bear. So commotion. A bear is a big creature, and they're not the most
a commotive struggle.
They're not the most discreet creatures when they're actually grabbing their prey like that, you know. And the boy would have surely screamed. Same with a boar. You know, boars. You know, it's like they're noisy little creatures running around, winking and yeah, exactly. So it's a little bit crazy. But this is one of the things get a little bit crazy, see, because Martin, the poor little lad, Martin's father, believes that Martin was abducted, and there's several reasons for this.
Right.
But this is what this actually sort of branches off into like quasi semi supernatural areas now. It's quite interesting. So let's cut back to the day when within an hour after Martin disappeared, about 6 miles away from where Martin disappeared, there was a man called Harold Key who was hiking the area with his 2 sons. Or it might have been a son and a daughter, I can't remember, but it's 2 children. And they were walking along the park, and they started hearing, Harold Key says he heard a scream and a bit of a commotion. He said it was the most terrifying scream he'd ever heard in his life, a blood-curdling scream. And it was hard to even ascertain whether it was an animal or a human or what it was. But he heard the blood-curdling scream. Shortly after he heard the scream, he claims to have seen a dishevelled man, covered from head to toe in strangely thick hair, and clearly attempting to remain unseen, fleeing through the woods. Key's family elaborated that the figure seemed, in hindsight, to have had a red object slung over his shoulder, matching the clothing that Martin was wearing.
The boy.
What makes this sighting even more strange is that when interviewed, the son of Harold Key didn't describe what they saw as a hairy, dishevelled man. He said that he thought he saw a bear carrying the boy. Whereas Harold Key said that he saw a strange, extremely hairy-looking bestial man carrying, which has led some people to believe that it was, if the child thought it was so bear-like that it actually was a bear, and then Harold Key himself thought it was some sort of strangely hairy man. That some people that are into like things like cryptozoology have put forward the idea that maybe it was something not quite of this world, or maybe not of this world as
like
we know
yeti.
it. Maybe some other type of weird beast.
Yeah.
Once more, there are strange tales going back hundreds of years of mountain men living upon the Appalachian Trail and the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, going all the way back to when the first European settlers settled in America. And there are reports that there are these strange nomads that live deep inside the forest, off-grid, completely detached from modern society, never had seen a television, never seen a phone, completely detached from society, still living like our ancestors would have done 400 years ago when the first Europeans sort of went over to America to settle. There's sightings throughout the last 100 years or so, every now and again, of someone seeing a crazy wild man. People that never shave, completely unshaven hair and beards, sometimes naked, sometimes not, and speaking in weird languages, like they've developed their own weird language.
Almost reminds me of that, a bit like the
Jabberwocky.
The Japanese,
the
Japanese monkey men that were deep in the forests in America.
Oh yeah.
That was really strange. They'd come out and make all these weird sounds.
Oh yeah, that was
remember
really
that?
strange, wasn't it? Yeah,
that was
the
that
samurai.
The 60s? Hey,
Yeah, I think it was the 60s. Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, that was in California, wasn't it? Those cowboys. Those
deep
cowboys.
right on the trail. Almost a similar thing, right deep in the out in the woods.
They were cowboys and rangers that were hiking and camping up miles and miles from the nearest car park, and they heard those weird samurai calls that they recorded on their tape recorders. But yeah, these Harold Key and his family saw a strange hairy beast. Whether it was a man or a bear, it's hard to say. But Harold Key seems pretty sure that it was a human, or at least something close to a human,
humanoid.
Because he claims that moments after they saw the figure, which apparently, when the figure locked eyes with Harold Poole, it looked like it was extremely concerned about the fact that Harold Key had seen him. And apparently it looked very worried, concerned, and it was very quick. It looked like he said at first it was like he was trying to hide. And then when it was clear that he was not hidden, he made off very quickly. But he says that moments after this, he said they weren't that far from the car park at the time. They'd only just started hiking. And he thinks he saw them get into... Oh, he didn't actually see them get into a white car, but he saw a white car, which he remembered seeing passing when they parked up in the car park, speed off. Now, this is strange, obviously. It's like... I mean, on the one case, it's a strange bestial man, to the point where his son even thought it was a bear. But then, obviously, bears can't drive white cars. And even if it was this weird mountain man that lived off-grid in nowhere from society, I doubt they drive cars. So this whole entire case and mystery is a very strange one. Also, a lot of people were very skeptical that if this individual, man or beast, if this individual did abduct Martin, he would have had to have been extremely physically fit to have gotten crossed 6 miles of arduous terrain in under an hour. As I said, he saw him about an hour after Martin's disappearance, and a lot of people a lot of police and things like that completely dismissed the idea that somebody could do that. But proponents of this theory, I think it was a park ranger who believed this theory, to prove that it could be done, wore a pack that would have been the weight of Martin at the time, and he successfully hiked the 6 miles from the area that Martin was to the location where Mr. Harold Key saw the individual. He successfully hiked the 6 miles within an hour to prove that it can be done. Also, Harold Key did say that, as well as looking very shady, that the individual was panting heavily and sweating a lot, and was visually, when you're super out of breath, it's like your whole body is like he said it was very physically looked physically worn out. It was breathing heavily, was sweating profusely, which would indicate that you'd been very recently doing arduous physical activity. You include the scream, the blood curdling scream that the Key family heard, and it adds credence to the thought that maybe it was Martin screaming, and that when the man, we'll call him man, saw that he had been witnessed, he was very startled and scared that he had been caught, and quickly made off and seemed to have somehow escaped in a car. Said a lot of people don't really know what to make of this case in general. As I said, some people on the far end, there's a lot of people that put it up as purely a supernatural case. Some people think that, as you said, he was abducted by a yeti, or maybe even some other type of strange creature like a skinwalker or something that was almost like used to be man once, but was now through witchcraft some sort of shapeshifter. Yeah, like a Wendigo or something like that, a Wendigo or a skinwalker, some man that's delved too deep into black magic and now has the ability to change into a bestial form. What's even creepy, going back to the reports of mountain men, is whereas some people just make out that these mountain men are pretty harmless, and every now and again hikers claim to have even go fishing in the Great Smoky Mountains National Parks and even see these mountain men fishing, and say that some of them say that they're fairly harmless. But there are also reports from other people saying that they're very dangerous and that they're even cannibalistic. That they even eat human flesh. So some people even believe that Martin was abducted and eaten by cannibals in the mountains.
No, thank you.
So, not good.
As I said, poor Dennis Martin has been missing for 53 years. His family never gave up searching for him. The case went on for many years, and as I said, that park ranger that successfully hiked I believe he did that decades after the poor boy's disappearance. There are still people involved in this case to this day that are still trying to figure out what happened to poor little Dennis Martin. But the one thing we do know is that poor little laddie was just 1 minute playing hide and seek with his friends and family, and then the next minute he was never seen again. To this day, 53 years later,
savage.
Park rangers had not been able to find him. Green Berets have not been able to find him. Nobody has found any remains of...
no more clues.
There are no clues. There's just that one report from that Harold Key. As I said, a very strange report. Said that Harold Key's wee lad thought it was a bear. Harold Key thought it was a very strange looking man. Did he or did he not, whatever the creature was, did he escape in a car? We'll never probably know for sure. If he did escape in the car, then that would explain why his remains have never been found in the forest. But I guess we'll just never truly know. So, this has been Mystery Mondays, and that was the disappearance of Dennis Martin.
What do you think happened?
I don't know, lad. It's a really hard one.
If you were to make a theory.
I don't even know if I have a theory, really. I think it's a fascinating case, isn't it, really? As I said, I think that the lad probably was abducted. I think.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I think it's
strangely coincidental, that whole commotion.
As I said, I know
it's quite close to.
I can see how on the surface it would seem almost like implausible at first that, like, you know, Harold Key was over 6 miles away. But as I said, if you were an extremely fit individual, I mean, let's face it, to make it into the army, you need to be able to run a mile in 10 minutes. Well, you know, 6 miles in an hour, that's a mile. That's a mile every 10 minutes, isn't it? You know, so fit individuals can do it. You know,
when was the Harold Key
sighting?
Yeah,
1 hour.
When did he come out and say it though?
Well, very soon after. Once the boy, pretty much after the boy had been announced disappeared, and then Harold Key heard about the case, he then came forward with his sighting.
It's interesting that the boy wouldn't have screamed like when it happened. You know what I mean? If Harold Key's like saying he's hearing him an hour after.
I guess you could say something like, if this weird, strange fella creeped up behind Martin, he could have put his hand around his mouth and launched off into the and literally was hiking up into the woods, off the beaten path, so to speak, up into a sort of a trail that only a mountain man would have known. That would have been very hard to follow.
They said about the red over his shoulder as well. If he was wearing a red t-shirt, I wonder if he knew about the report of the red, or he said that without knowing, you know.
This is one of the things that a lot of people say, because they don't actually say outright that they saw obviously a boy. They just say that in hindsight, once they'd heard that the boy had been wearing red, in hindsight they think that they saw something red over this humanoid's shoulder. So whether that's almost like a planted memory on their part, you know, sort of piecing the puzzle together in a way that sort of not suits them, but you know what I mean. It's like they're reading that, it's planting it, they're putting two and two together. They've had this strange experience, and they're convincing themselves that it must have something to do with it.
Imagining what it looked like, and then was that red? Could have been red.
Yeah,
I swear that was red.
Yeah, exactly.
It's easily done.
Exactly. And as I said, I suppose at first, you know, you could say, if you were like an extremely, like maybe overly rational person, you could say, well, because it sounds very strange, doesn't it, that Harold Key's son thought that it was a bear, not a man. But then you could say, you know, at the end of the day, children say a lot of strange things, and maybe, you know, children's imaginations are through the roof. You know, he might have, you know,
especially out in the woods.
Yeah, and I know, and I haven't actually heard them say how far away they thought that the man that they saw was.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
But if he was a fair distance away, you know, and it was a big hairy creature, you're a small lad, you know, you're out in the wilderness, you know, you're in a place, you've heard your parents say that there are bears in the area and probably to watch out for them. You might see a weird, crazy, hairy thing and think that's a bear. If you're like some 5-year-old lad or something, you know. So it's a hard one. I don't know. It's hard to say what happened to Dennis Martin. I do think it's extremely strange though that if he did fall down a ravine and died like that, I think it would have been highly likely that somebody would have found his body, his corpse. You know, with so many searchers, and as I said, you know, it wasn't like there were urban pencil pushers looking for them. It was Green Berets and park rangers. These are people that know the environment, you know, Bear Grylls type individuals that would know how to traverse the land and be knowing what to look out for. And if little Dennis was wearing a red top, if it was something as simple as he just fell and died, as I said, you thought it would have stuck out quite a lot. I'd like to think that if somebody disappeared in the Quantox area, if there were a lot of people that were used to hiking and, you know, park rangers and stuff looking for him, that they'd be found if they were wearing bright clothing and it was as simple as they fell somewhere and died. I think they would be found. I know that obviously the Great Smoky Mountain National Park area is much bigger than something like the Quantock Hills, but at the same time, if it was just a matter of that, it's not like the 6-year-old lad would have been travelling 20 miles before he died. He would have been somewhere close to the camp. So it's a strange one. But as I said, he disappeared off the face of the earth for all intents and purposes.
It's interesting with the remains being found and then not found. Maybe the mountain men saw the guy find it and then were like, oh, we can't have this, and then moved him.
maybe that's a good theory. And one thing I think that's good to mention as well before we wrap up the disappearance of Dennis Martin is that the Martin family, his father William and his grandfather Clyde, and his brother and his mother and everyone think to this day that the authorities know much more than they're letting on.
Ooh, right. Interesting.
They think that the police know more than they've ever told us, but there's almost like a cover-up. They also, apparently, that the whole inclusion of the Green Berets was a little bit shady. Apparently, it's not really common for Green Berets, a very high up, well-respected military personnel, like right up there with like Navy SEALs and things like that. It's not really common protocol for things like Green Berets to be called in for the disappearance of a lad or a lass. And a lot of people have put forward that the Green Berets were looking for something other than Dennis Martin. That they were
like a big weird hairy man.
Like it was coincided, but that maybe it was some government thing. Like the government knew of some strange creature, or whether it was mountain men, or another sort of humanoid creature that they'd heard classified reports of living in these mountains, and that the Green Berets were actually there to hunt the creature. You can actually find photographs online of the Green Berets before they set off on their journey.
Did they have guns?
They did have handguns. They didn't have any rifles on them, but some people have put forward that it would have been very easy a lot of people have put forward that they might have deliberately not had rifles on them because it would have looked suspicious. Because let's face it, if you're looking for a lad, you're not carrying heavy weapons. But they said it would have been very easy for the US Army to have done like a cachet drop later on, a couple of miles into the forest. It's a regular thing that the military does. If a helicopter had just come and just dropped in like a cachet of weapons, they could have gotten locked and loaded away from the public eye, which would have been a lot less suspicious. But even in the pictures, they're all carrying handguns, and they are in their military equipment, obviously, from head to toe, but they just got handguns on them. So it's a very strange case. I said the family are convinced that the authorities knew more than they've ever come forward, and it all seems a little bit like washed over the case.
A wee bit shady.
Just a wee bit shady. But poor little Dennis Martin will probably never know for sure what happened to this little lad. Disappeared in the Appalachian Mountains, the Great Smoky Mountain National Park in Tennessee, at the age of 6 years old on June the 14th, 1969. Just 6 days before his 7th birthday. Poor little lad.
Sad story, man.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Dennis Martin. I mean, we don't know for sure that he's dead, but let's face it,
chances are
he's probably dead. So rest in peace, Dennis Martin. And if you are alive out there somewhere, what the bleeding hell's happened to you, lad?
Let us know.
Let us know. leave a comment below. But that was the disappearance of Dennis Martin, and this has been Mystery Mondays. Mystery Mondays. Mystery Mondays. Mystery Mondays.